He is speaking from presentation mastery, using descriptive language, 5 to 7 minutes. The title of his speech is The Mystery of Woodchucks, How the Equation Was Solved. The Mystery of Woodchucks, How the Equation Was Solved. And welcome, Jess Lyman.
I don't know if you're aware that there are 6 equations that are still unsolved. And they haven't been solved for the last 100 years. These math problems exist, but there are no proofs that they work 100% of the time. As an example, x squared plus y squared equals z squared was understood by the Egyptians, and they used that math equation to build some amazing pyramids. And yet, they didn't know why it worked, but it did work. And for years, they were working on proofs, and this one is called the Egyptian dance. X squared couple, y squared couple, and z squared couple. And as you tried to solve that proof, they would be dancing together, and eventually that problem was solved. But I'm here today to tell you that there are not only 6 math problems that haven't been solved, but a 7th. And this 7th equation has been the pariah of mathematicians for over 100 years. In fact, mathematicians are embarrassed up until now to even talk about this problem because it was expected to be simple to write out the equation and do the proof. And here is the math problem statement. How much wood can a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Now, before I go into an explanation of how this math problem was solved, let me go into some of the terminology. What is a woodchuck? Well, a woodchuck is basically a big rodent. It's about the size of a beaver with the tail cut off. It lives in Canada in a hole underground, very close to Quebec. There are no documented photographs of a woodchuck, but using folklore and stories and drawings on rocks, they've determined that woodchucks exist. And here's what woodchucks have done for the last centuries. When a Canadian would go out of his or her tent or out of a cabin, where there used to be a nice tree, instead there would be a pile of logs. And it was determined that these woodchucks would cut down a tree, cut these logs, and make a pie. Well, some professors, math professors at Princeton University were really frustrated and tired about being embarrassed at parties, and they decided to set up a very sophisticated camera system near a woodchuck hole and some fresh trees. And guess what? In 2019, they caught a video clip of the red paw of the woodchuck as it took a log and threw it onto a woodpile. Well, there was so much elation about this partial success. Even some of the university students would say, hey, I saw my professor. He was giving another professor a high five before they put their pencil in there, looked down, and went back into the classroom. Now listen, that only solved half the problem. Because remember, how much wood can a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? There's 2 meanings behind this chuck. One is to cut, and one is to throw. Okay? So they solved the second part, but they hadn't solved the first part. How many? How much? They continued to use this camera system but to no avail, because the woodchucks are, by their very nature, smarter than math professors. And so every time there was a pile of wood, they now found their camera gnawed right in half. Well, in 2023, a PhD student from Princeton University decided that, hey, let's listen to the audio of the video. And she removed all the distortion from the audio. And guess what she heard? Nya, 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 snap. Nya, 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 snap. And then a whoosh as the log was thrown out of the pile. And she determined in her paper this amazing thing that each log took exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes to cut and throw 6 times in an 8-hour period. Well, you have it there, folks. You have the equation. It should be simple. But they wrote out the equation, they sent out that equation for peer review, and it didn't work. They had to add a little constant in there. Constant means a number. And when they put in that number, it worked. But with mathematicians, you just can't make up numbers. You have to prove where they came from. Well, a graduate student last month, listening to that audio again, said, you know, that whoosh is the air resistance as that log is being thrown through the air. And then it was just a very simple matter of determining whether the woodchuck threw the wood overhand, which is an upchuck, or under, which is a downchuck. They went back to that original video of the red paw, and guess what? Woodchucks, by their very nature, upchuck. And with that, the problem was solved.